Suppose the problem with paracetamol or acetaminophen, depending on where you are in the world, is not the dose, but the capacity of your liver to tolerate it. This is a really important question, and it almost represents a public health kind of statement. And it's related to some work that I've been doing in preparation for what's coming up in just about a week's time. I'm looking at why is toxic liver disease rising across every age group. This is a very important presentation, and a lot of people will underestimate it because they're thinking, well, I don't have any liver problems. Well, this is the whole point, not yet. This may be an important flag that is connected with the pandemic for which we need to try and find solutions. And so when we look at this data that I'm talking about here, this is what it looks like. And this is what I've been focused on. This is what changed after the pandemic. And this is all the age groups that I've been looking at up to 75, 186 million NHS hospital admissions. And what had stood out was that in every age group, toxic liver disease, this is 79.3% in children. When you go to 18 to 29, it is toxic liver disease 97.1%. So you can see it has risen in the age groups. When you then go to 30 to 34, there is a 134% increase. And when you look at the elderly over 75, toxic liver disease, 156% increase. This is not normal. And this is why I'm saying that it caused me to look at it in some detail. We need to understand what is going on in terms of the health of the population. So I'm going to share with you something. This is just about the science, and so that you can be aware of important principles about paracetamol. Let me be clear. This is one of my favorite drugs to use for pain relief. And when you're using it, I explain to patients very often that you want to use it regularly, not just when you feel pain, because it doesn't work in the same way. It's not an acute pain relief medication like ibuprofen. It works best in the background, being consistently taken. And that means you therefore have to be careful with regards to the dosing. So, why is it so important? When you look at how paracetamol works and the risks that it has in terms of the population, this is why if someone overdoses on paracetamol, this is a pretty serious issue. So, this is how paracetamol is processed in the liver. And you can see when I have it here, this is the main detox pathway. And these two, glucuronidation and sulfation, mainly get rid and detoxify the paracetamol. But a percentage of it ends up in this pathway with the CYP enzyme, where it produces a toxic metabolite. And this has to be neutralized by glutathione. This is what happens when someone overdoses. So when they overdose, this toxic metabolite here, if it continues to remain in the liver, it will do damage to it. And so what happens is that you need glutathione in order to mop it up. The problem when somebody has overdosed is that they oftentimes run out of glutathione. And this is why part of the treatment for a paracetamol overdose is to give them NAC, N-acetylcysteine, that helps the liver to make glutathione. So the principle is that when you're taking paracetamol, you must be aware that that can be an issue. Now, there's an important point in this when we're thinking about it. And the important point is that there are certain at-risk people who need to be careful about their dosing of paracetamol. And this is the position statement from 2022. And this is from the British Hepatology Pharmacy Group. And what they were pointing out here is that when you're looking at the dosing of it, if your weight is less than 40 kilograms, 500 milligrams 4 times a day, that's like a child's dose, so a maximum dose of 2 grams. Normal weight or above 50 kilograms, you can go up to 4 grams. That's 1 gram every 6 hours. Now, there is a caution for people. Let's just make sure you can read this. The risk factor here in terms of damage is if your weight is low, older, kidney disease, already having liver disease, malnourished, dehydrated, or just quite frail, and a high alcohol consumption. So, all of these are already in place with regards to recommendations for paracetamol. But what I'm seeing with regards to the trend in terms of toxic liver disease that nobody has accounted for as yet. As I said, this information here is information that you haven't heard before because nobody has done this kind of analysis. And we're talking on average a 100% increase in toxic liver disease. Here is the point, is that when you think about it, you then have to reflect on what really is the mechanism. When I do the talk coming up, and as I remind you, if you want to hear as I go through the science around why this toxic liver disease is rising, look in the description below and you will get a link to it. But what I'm focused on here is that there are likely to be three primary drivers that are related to the pandemic that I'm going to cover in the next week or two, week and a half, so to speak. Those drivers make the liver vulnerable. And now here is where you get the overlap that people really need to think about. Because when you're thinking about paracetamol, it's not just paracetamol, because if your liver doesn't have the same capacity, and it can be in relation to the fact that you're struggling more to control or to tolerate alcohol, that could point to liver. It doesn't mean that it is. Or some medication doesn't work as effectively because it needs to be processed in the liver. And so you don't know your liver reserve, because by the time your liver function tests go abnormal, you only have 20% of liver function available. So abnormal liver function tests are not really a good or wise indicator. It's almost too late. When you look at this image here that I've put together, the common medicines that will add to the burden, at the top here, as you can see, I've got the paracetamol. This is the one that you'll be taking all the time. And what you have to be aware of, so if you are taking alcohol in moderate doses and you recognize that you're not tolerating it as well, you may be wise to reduce the total amount of paracetamol in 24 hours. Instead of 4 grams, maybe you need 3. When you're combining it with other drugs, statins, benzodiazepines, some opioids, antidepressants, all of these drugs go through the same detox pathways. So if you are on multiple things, you're then possibly taking alcohol on top of it, suddenly this pathway can become overwhelmed, leading to paracetamol making this abnormal toxic metabolite. And my instinct is that what possibly is happening is that the liver capacity generally is overwhelmed by all of these things. And that limited liver reserve with polypharmacy is driving liver disease. Listen, one of the problems here is that some people may say, well, I don't know about that. Here is the thing that I say to people. At the moment, when it comes to this kind of advice, by the time you hear it, the damage may already be done. There is no harm with being educated about the science and being aware and cautious. And this is all I'm saying. The reality is that something is happening. As I said, when you look at all the age groups, and I'll show you this again, we are talking about here, when we look at this age group here, we are talking about 157% increase in terms of the link, 56.3% increase in terms of the risk of toxic liver disease. Over 75s, the highest increase was in the 60 to 74 age group, 171.1% increase in toxic liver disease. Something is going on. It is happening across all age groups, but it is highest in the age group 60 to 64. that probably could mean that they are underestimating their capacity for their liver to tolerate stuff, because that's an age group that's on a lot of medication. They may have arthritis and ongoing things. They need pain relief, and the natural aim is to try and therefore optimize the medication that you're using. And if it's something like paracetamol, which is a very good baseline pain relief, you may have to be aware that your dosing needs to be different. And that's the point that I'm making today. Just be aware of the science. Paracetamol, wonderful drug, but in high doses, which is why overdose can do so much damage, and this is why we treat it very aggressively. What you don't want to do is inadvertently overdose just because you were not aware that your liver may have been under strain. Think about it. Best way to know, join me, because I'll go through that in detail, including the strategies that you can do and what you should think about in terms of investigations you should be asking your doctor to do in order to try and understand better whether or not you have any risks. Thank you for listening. Look forward to sharing more information in the near future.